Welcome to the Get in the Fight podcast. My name is Nate Whitson, and I'm the founder of Get in the Fight Ministries and our exclusive online fight club for Christian men. Everything we do here is dedicated to helping Christian men become the men that God meant for them to be. So if you're looking for helpful content and conversations that can help you to grow and become the man that God made you to be, then you're in the right place. But before we get started, please do me a huge favor and be sure to subscribe, click the like button, and then leave us a 5-star review. Doing that helps us to reach more men who are looking for content just like this. Also, if you'd like to learn more about our mission and how to get involved or how to join the Fight Club, then head on over to getinthefight.club. That's getinthefight.club and learn more today. But without further ado, it's time to get in the fight. So let's go. Hey guys, welcome to the Get in the Fight podcast. I'm your host, Nate Whitson. Glad to be here today with you guys. Thanks for listening to the show. We say this a lot, but this is a podcast for Christian men who are looking to get in the fight, to be the man that God meant for them to be. We really wrestle with ideas like, how do I live a life of purpose? How do I become a better follower of Jesus, a better man, a better husband, things like that. And so again, if you're a Christian man looking for a place like that to challenge you in your faith, to help you to grow, to help you to connect with other men who are on this everyday man journey to becoming more of that man, that's really what we're doing here. And so if you are new to the show, do me a favor as we get started here. Everybody that does a podcast like this tells you this, but it really does make a difference as we grow our ministry and our brand. It really helps if you go to YouTube, go to @Get in the Fight on YouTube, subscribe to the show, comment, share it. All of that stuff makes a big difference. It helps push the show basically to other men who are looking for content like this. So again, if you like the show, subscribe to it, share it, and like it. We really appreciate that. Today, we're continuing a series that we do here called Fight Club Stories. And the reason for that is inside our ministry, which is called Get in the Fight, our private exclusive app for Christian men is called the Fight Club. And so these are men that are a part of our free ministry, which, by the way, if you go to getinthefight.club, you can click one of the join buttons. It's free to join. You and I would have a one-on-one Zoom meeting to just kind of share with you more of the vision, the ideas of it. But man, there's men like Tim, who you're going to meet today, and guys all across the country, all across the world, who are coming looking for a place to belong with other Christian men. It's just men in our community online. It's a great place. But in our Fight Club, one of the things that I like to do is just kind of share the stories of men's lives. And so we call these Fight Club stories, and we interview men who are a part of our community, and they share really just their journey and their story as God grows and works in their life. And so today's a continuation of that. And really our hope is that when you hear Tim's story today, stories like these just give us hope. They give us encouragement, and they inspire us to live bigger and better lives ourselves. And so that's our hope. That's what we're praying for today. And I'm really looking forward to it. So I'm excited to do this and welcome my friend Tim Lewis to the show today. Tim, thanks for jumping on and giving us your time today, man.
Yeah, happy to do it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Let's just jump right into it and just kind of share with us a little bit. Tell us, kind of from the beginning about your background, where you're born and raised, and what was life like for you growing up?
Sure. So I grew up in a pretty solid Christian family. My parents, they were saved when they were younger, before they were married, and they both went to Christian colleges. And so when they had us kids, they put us into local private Christian school there in Ohio, where I grew up, and we went there kindergarten through high school. And so that was extremely helpful to my spiritual walk, I would say. And when I was about 5, I don't remember a lot of the details, but I do know that I talked to my dad on the way home from church, and after we got home, he led me to the Lord, and I got saved when I was 5. As I got older, both my parents, being the good Christian parents that they are, encouraged me to be spending time in God's Word and prayer and all those kinds of things. But for whatever reason, I just didn't make it a priority. And so when I got to be 5th or 6th grade and started being attracted to girls, that attraction was just just about purely lust. And so I continued to feed that, and um, that lust blossomed into an addiction to porn that I fought through high school and into college. And so throughout that time, there were several times where I would, because of the struggle with sin, I doubted my salvation. And
Yep.
and so one of the things that one of the reasons that I am quite confident now, looking back, that it was at 5 years old that I was saved, was because I was so convicted by my sin.
Mm.
And what I know now is that if I hadn't been saved, there wouldn't have been any conviction. There
Yep.
wouldn't have been any guilt associated with what I had done and what I was doing. But there was. And one of the verses that really, especially later on, as I was fighting with that addiction, with the addiction, one of the verses that really encouraged me was Philippians 1:6, that says, "We'll perform it until the day of Jesus Christ."
Yeah.
And that promise was just so comforting to me, that this work that God had started in my life, it wasn't finished, and He was going to finish it, and He is going to finish it.
That's right.
And so yeah, as through college, I continued to struggle. I started out at Pensacola Christian College, and at that time, their internet was just a whitelist of sites. So you could only go to the sites on their list.
Yep.
And I had come back early from Christmas break one year for block class. And so I had extra time one night, and to be honest, I was hungry to satisfy my lusts.
Yep.
And so I was just basically going through every single site on their list, trying to find something that could satisfy my lust. One of the sites was an ebook site. And so I started looking through the ebook site, trying to find something. And I found a book on porn, on how to fight porn. And so I decided to download it and read it. And at that time, it was exactly what I needed. And so I started practicing some of the things that I learned in that book, and it really helped me turn things around and start to get some victory. So that was the spring, in the spring of my, and that summer I transferred to Bob Jones, and the next summer I met the woman that would become my wife. And so through that time, I was having pretty consistent victory. And I feel like I had figured out how to deal with temptation.
Can you pause there real quick in your story?
Sure.
And just kind of what were some of those things that you read, and do you remember the book? And first of all, and
yeah, so the book was Every Man's Battle.
Yeah, yeah.
I think there's two. They
You might be
published a
right.
few versions, but it was one of those.
Okay, yeah. Arterburn.
So I think now there are better books out there that I would recommend. But anyhow, the primary thing that I started doing was, they talk about bouncing your eyes, and
Okay.
when you're confronted with an image that is tempting to you, and that was, so I started practicing that and doing that, and that was pretty helpful. So that remained helpful up until my relationship with my now wife, became pretty intense around the time that we got engaged. And so that was the fall semester of my senior year. Or no, it was after I graduated that we got engaged. So it would have been first semester of my graduate school. So I was at Clemson, living in a Christian guy's house, but we were pretty much independent of each other. And because I was in this relationship, it it turned upside down everything that I had been doing, because now I've got all of these passions running high, and now I've got to figure out, how do I deal with temptation in these new circumstances.
Yep.
And so I did end up falling. My wife went to a trusted counselor that she had to, should I marry this guy? And because it was, at the time, it was an anomalous thing, and it wasn't a thing that I was practicing at the time, the counselor said, he's repentant. It's not a normal thing. I don't counsel you to break off the relationship. So we did end up getting married. And after we were married, I don't remember exactly how long it was, but I did end up falling again. And at that time, it was embarrassing, frankly, for obvious reasons.
Yeah,
and
sure.
So I didn't tell my wife, and I just hid it. And because that inevitably ends up leading to lying to her, that makes it easier to fall again. And so at that point, it became once again a habit.
Yep.
And over the next couple years, I continued to give myself to that, and allow myself to fall into that. And so this is where I think it's really important to talk about what James says in James 1, where he says, "Every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then when lust has conceived, it brings forth sin. And sin, when it is finished, brings forth death."
Yep.
And Psalm 1 also talks about a similar path downward to death. And I think in both in James 1 and in Psalm 1, there's a contrasting path upward to life.
Yep.
And that quite literally played out in my life, because as a result of my sin, I was not being productive at work, and I ended up being let go from my job. And so now I'm at home.
Was it because you got caught, or was it because of productivity, because you were just so obsessed and your mind can only fixate on porn that you end up being terrible at work? How did that work out?
It was the latter. I wasn't being productive. I was making mistakes, costing the company a lot of money, that kind of thing. And so I was let go. At the time, my wife was working as well. And so she was out of the house. I was at home by myself. And so as a result, I spent a lot of time on the internet doing things I shouldn't.
Is this full grown, every day now, Tim, at this point in your life? Is it almost like an everyday addiction at this point?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. Obviously, some of the time I'm looking for a job, but a lot of the time I'm just, So obviously at this point I'm feeling worthless, and like I'm a burden on my wife, and not providing any value or doing anything helpful to her. And that leads to some dark places, and it led me to some dark places. And so about, I would say, 6 months after I was let go, I decided to take my car and drive at 80 miles an hour without a seatbelt into a telephone pole.
Mm.
And so God obviously had different plans for me, and he sovereignly said, overruled that decision and said, no, you want to die. I understand, but that's not going to happen. I'm not going to let that happen. I have other plans for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came out of that wreck pretty much without a scratch, and walked away from it. Obviously, the car was totaled, but I came out of that, and I'm now like, okay, well, clearly that didn't work. I was like Jonah, saying to the people on board, I don't want what God wants for me. Kill me instead. And God says no. God says you are not allowed to die.
I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, coming out of that, since then there have been other struggles. But I think with each time, so there's been times since then where I have once again started down that path of destruction. But each time I started down that path, I didn't go as far down that path as I had the time before. So each time I learned something that I think is extremely helpful to us in our walk. So the first thing was Bible memorization.
Yeah.
Whenever I have tried to do devotions in the past, it has gone down one of two different extremes. On the one hand, it becomes just a rote thing that you do every day, and you're just dragging your eyes over the page, not really getting anything out of it, and it's just what you do because that's what you do.
Right.
And
just a religious activity.
Right. Checking something off the to-do list. Okay, that's done. What's next? So I've done that a lot. There's also been a lot of times where I get down into the weeds of a particular topic, of studying a particular passage or something, and you end up, reading all the different commentaries, and those lead to questions on other passages, and pretty soon you're trying to figure out some debate that has been going on for centuries that, it is important, but it doesn't really further your spiritual walk right now.
Yeah.
And so those two extremes, I've struggled to figure out, okay, how do I meaningfully study God's word?
Yep.
While not getting bogged down in these inane philosophical debates that have been going on for centuries.
Right.
and so figuring that out was hard because generally what you're told is read the Bible, study it, and try to understand what it's saying and apply it to your life. Okay, well, if I'm doing that passionately, generally, maybe this is just how I'm wired, but generally, I'm going to end up down in the weeds of stuff.
Yep.
And what I found was that if I'm instead of just reading the passage, if I memorize it, it's a whole different ballgame. Because when I'm memorizing it, you see connections that you wouldn't see otherwise. And so when I memorize a passage, I can have it all in my head.
Yep.
And when you're just reading it, you don't have it all in your head at the same time, even if you're reading it in one setting. And so So when you memorize it, you know it at a deeper level than you do when you're reading it. And
That's
so
right.
you can see connections between things that you wouldn't be able to see otherwise. Also, when you're memorizing it, you'll have that in your mind when you come across circumstances, and God will bring that to mind in those circumstances, so that he can teach you something from that passage that maybe you didn't recognize when you
Yep.
first read it. And the other thing is, in terms of accountability, a lot of accountability that I've had in the past has consisted of, did you do your devotions today?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I'm in sin, if I'm sinning otherwise, then just lying about it is very easy,
Yep.
right? So what I found myself doing in those circumstances was saying, yeah, I did my devotions,
Mm-hmm.
when I hadn't cracked the Bible at all.
Yep.
When you're memorizing scripture, and the accountability takes the form of, can you demonstrate that you have progressed and memorized more than you had last week? That's a whole different ballgame,
Yeah.
because you can't really fake that.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, we talk about that a lot in Fight Club. Each week we give our men, we read through chronologically in the Bible. So we're trying to help men to be in the Word, because it's so
Mm-hmm.
critical, exactly what you're saying. And then for those that really want to take their walk further, I always, post on Monday a verse of the week. And I mean, I'm telling you, there is something to what you're saying. I know you memorize kind of bigger chunks than just one at a
Mm-hmm.
time, and I think there's some real power to that. But there's something about God's word that is so critical to getting out of whatever dark hole you're in.
Yeah.
Can I shift this slightly too? I'm really curious of this, because I think a lot of guys listening to this, I'll be curious your take on this. You talked about you grew up in a good Christian home. Mom and dad did the right things, tried to raise you the right way. You were in
Mm-hmm.
church. They walked it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Where did it go wrong? Because I know that there's probably Christian parents that will listen to this, dads that are going to listen to this and just think, okay, I'm getting my kids to church. I'm doing the right things.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe don't even see any of the signs or recognize any of the things that were there. What would have been helpful, I guess, for you
Mm-hmm.
as that 5th or 6th grader, to have had your parents involved in some way? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know how to best answer it, but like, how do we
No,
help parents recognize
that's an
that?
excellent question, and I was actually meaning to mention this, but I forgot. So thanks.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is the society at the time was uh so I want to be very careful, because my parents, they and so a lot of people, they just throw their parents under the bus and stuff like that, and uh, it wasn't their fault.
Sure. Understood.
It was mine
Mm-hmm.
completely. But I think now, in hindsight, there are some things that we see that can be done better.
Yep.
There's a lot more resources available to parents now in teaching their kids about God's design for sex.
Mm.
And there's stuff, I think it starts from very early, when the kids, like, teaching your kids, this is where babies come from. And you don't have to be explicit or anything like that, but
Right.
just saying, God made you the way you are, and you're beautiful the way you are, and God made you that way for a reason, and this is the way God has designed it to work. And so it starts there, and then having, or starting at that young age, and as they get older, having regular conversations with them
Mm-hmm.
about different things at age appropriate levels. So when they get to be in 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, it's not going to be weird to start having the more detailed conversations about, your friends are going to be talking about these things. Here's what it means. I'd rather you hear it from me than from them.
Yeah.
And these are some things that you can do to respond to that in a right way.
Yeah.
So that when their friend comes to them and says, hey, look at this picture that I've got on my phone. And it's a picture of,
Whatever.
some woman or whatever.
Yeah.
Your child will know and be prepared and be able to say, get that away from me. I don't want to look at it. And then come to you and say, I just want to let you know.
Yeah.
This happened.
Yeah. That's good.
And this is what I did. And
it's almost like the relationship is what you're saying, right? Like not just the religion.
Exactly.
It's not enough to just say like, hey, I get my kids to church. Like that's not leading enough. And we need men that are hearing this to go, you know what? Your kids are like hammered with this way earlier than we were even as kids probably. And that means we've got to be way earlier in building a real relationship with our kids that can be open even about sex, which is tough for a lot of people to take on.
Yes. Yeah. So if you're starting to practice having those conversations when the kid is, 2 and 3, that will help you become more comfortable with it and help them see that, hey, this is not something that has to be weird.
Yep.
And they'll be able to be willing to come to you and talk to you about it and stuff like that. And also, I guess, so I'm speaking as a parent of young children. My son is 5. My daughter is 2.5.
Okay.
So obviously I have not had those later conversations yet.
Yeah.
And I would say if you're a parent of older children, you can always say, I haven't been doing this. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start over. And
that's great.
Try to start having those conversations.
It's funny, Tim. I don't know how much even in Fight Club I've shared this yet. As of the recording of this, it's just a work in progress right now. But probably release it sometime next year. But I'm actually working on a book right now that will complement another one that's coming out in December of this year. But anyways, the book is really geared towards helping Christian parents talk about sex, because I think this is such a big deal. It's going to be called Let's Talk About Sex, but it's going to talk about 20 questions, 20 ideas, 20 tips to help parents better start this dialogue with their teenagers in particular. Will be my focus of this book. But everything that we're saying anyways is so critical. And there's, everything that you're saying is like, it starts earlier than your teen years, this open dialogue and conversation. But I think like, you and I are both good stories with this in terms of we both grew up in really good Christian homes. And I think that, again, it wasn't our parents' faults at all, but when a kid gets enslaved to this lust and sin and pornography or other kind of deviant behavior, a lot of times our parents just don't even know. This is such a secret thing. And you've mentioned this a few times, started hiding. And in that hiding, you start hiding a lot of things in your life. It just becomes easy to be a liar. And that lie leads to other lies in different areas of your life, to the point where, and your story is really powerful. And I really appreciate your vulnerability, Tim, with telling your story today. Like who would have ever guessed that a little bit of a lie here, a little bit of a secret here would have been so publicly even like exposed through trying to take your own life and, or even just losing your job. Like you would have never connected those dots that you would end up in those places. And that's the deviousness of sin, isn't it?
Yeah. I've heard it said that sin will take you farther than you want to go, cost you more than you want to pay, and keep you longer than you want to stay. And that's right. Absolutely true. You do not, you get into it we think of it kind of. I think a lot of people think of it kind of like dessert, a guilty pleasure that, if this were all I ate, then that'd be bad. But
Hmm.
just a little bit here and there in moderation,
Yep.
it's not gonna do
Yep.
anything.
Yep.
It's just a little thing, and it turns out it's not like dessert at all. It's more like fentanyl, where
That's right.
it gets you, catches you, and
Kills you.
kills you. Yeah. The
Hey,
the other verse that's really powerful that I came across recently. There's actually two of them. One is that go together. One is Ecclesiastes 8:11. Says, because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. And the other one is Psalm 50:21. These things have you done, and I kept silence. You thought that I was altogether such a one as yourself, but I will reprove you and set them in order before your eyes. So the point is, in God's mercy, he sometimes does not exact punishment right away on the
yep.
first sin. But we so often take that mercy and see it as an excuse to continue sinning.
Hmm.
And it's the end result of that is, at some point, judgment is coming.
Yep.
And Satan wants to use that to kill us. I can't put it any more plainly than that, because that is his desire. He wants us dead. We are in God's image, and he loves nothing more than destroying the image of God.
Yeah.
And so if he can get us to a point where he can kill us, then that is absolutely what he's going to do.
That's that's like he gets you out of the fight, right? He gets you
Right,
out of being the man that
right.
God meant for you to be, and he does it in a way that in the beginning feels like manliness, having sex
Mm-hmm.
with this other woman online,
Yep.
right? Or in your mind, and it feels like it scratches that itch for us of like, this is manly. It's like we put ourselves in those stories and think it's real, and what it does is it slowly takes away the very thing you think it's going to provide, and it does. It kills masculinity. It kills manhood the way God designed it. And in fact, I know we're kind of winding down in time here a little bit, but talk about what it did in your marriage a little bit more. Talk about how it has hurt the marriage and how you've kind of like restructured that, because I think a lot of men need to hear and know
Sure.
that if they're dabbling with this, to your point, like it is trying to kill you. And I know you've lived out some of this story. Can you speak to that for a couple minutes?
Yeah, so I thought I could lie to my wife and that she wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that's not actually possible. I was lying to myself, saying, this I can keep it together. I can live one life in private and another life in public.
Mm.
And I thought I could do that. But the reality is that's not actually possible. She knew something was going on.
Mm.
She tried to convince herself that what she thought was going on wasn't actually going on, because it's uncomfortable for her
Mm-hmm.
to come to that conclusion.
And she thought
So
she'd already dealt with it, right? That's why, like before
yeah,
marriage, she thought, "Oh, okay, well, no, that was an old thing, but not a current thing."
yeah. So
Yeah.
she was telling herself, "Oh, that suspicious thing that I saw him doing, oh, that wasn't actually."
Mm-hmm.
And she was coming up with stories of to excuse my behavior, basically. And so one of the main things that ended up happening was I was not able to perform in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's embarrassing and stuff to happen.
Yep.
And I would come up with some excuse or something. But the reality is that when you just masturbated to something online earlier that day, well, when it comes to loving your wife in the bedroom,
Yep.
you're not going to be able to perform very well. And so, one of the big problems that people are starting to have today is erectile dysfunction with men in their, younger than 40.
Absolutely.
And, there are other explanations for that, such as, obesity and other things. But I, I am convinced that a huge part of it is addiction to pornography.
100%.
And so yeah, when you start being satisfied with your wife and not with some woman online, things become a lot better. And uh the along with that is, as we're seeking to love our wives, one of the things that I've been trying to learn a lot recently is loving her without ulterior motives.
Yeah.
So not, oh, I'll do the dishes because then she'll respond to my doing the dishes with love, and maybe I'll be able to get her in bed.
Yep.
No, you do the dishes just because you love her.
That's right.
So that's been something that I've been trying to learn a lot recently. And
Yeah.
it can be hard because sometimes those ulterior motives are there when you don't think that they are.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's like dying to self is a battle in every area of our life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And learning to say no to those fleshly desires. God gave you those good desires, and you're right. Like teaching kids, teaching other men listening, like sex is awesome. God is for it. He says yes, but in many cases, it's just not yet.
Right.
We've only been
Right.
told, most of us growing up, it's just no, 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 no. He's like, no, absolutely, go for it, have a blast. But when you do it in the context of how I've designed it, you will flourish. And outside of that context, you will die. It will
Yeah.
suffocate you. It'll kill not even just your sex life, but it'll kill your life, like you described so well in your story. And so, man, I'm so grateful. I didn't know necessarily that's where this story would go today, but man, as a sexual addiction recovery coach myself, one of the things as I counsel and talk with guys about this very conversation all the time is the deceitfulness of sin. And you've done such a great job today, Tim, and just kind of like laying out your story from beginning to end here of just, it's not enough just to go to church. When you start to lie, and I think this is one of the deceiving parts of this particular sin, it makes you a liar. And in that lying, you don't even realize that the one lie compounds into the other, and the destruction that comes from it. You eventually just lie to yourself so fully that the devil convinces you that you're worthless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a powerful conclusion that he comes to in your
Yeah,
life.
and it doesn't just hurt you either.
That's right.
Because when I confessed, the multiple times that I've confessed to my wife, it always hurts her.
Hmm.
And it obviously does, and it hurts a lot. And
Yep.
she's had some issues as a result of the things that I have done, and there's been a lot of healing that has had to go on there. So yeah, you think that this, even if it hurts someone, it's only going to hurt you, but no, that's another lie. You're hurting other people too.
Yeah. Hey Tim, as we wrap up here, what any last piece of advice, or if there's a man listening today that's really just they're battling through this as well, any last words or thoughts for him to encourage him or to make him aware, maybe to rock him out of his slumber, whatever it is, any last thoughts for guys listening that are dealing with this?
Yeah, I would say the main thing, the main three things that I have done that have really benefited me was spending 10 to 15 minutes every day memorizing God's word. It's not that long, just 10 or 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jesus told Peter and the other disciples to be praying right before he knew that Peter was going to deny him. And I think prayer is absolutely essential to be
Mm.
able to resist sin.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, find a good friend who will keep you accountable and not just be willing to check in with you that, you're doing your devotions or whatever. That's all good and fine. But be there to be able to, for you to call him when you're struggling and have him pray for you. Having someone be able to come along and help you spiritually when you're struggling, that is so helpful. And I think that's one of the strengths of Get in the Fight Club.
Yep.
Because it can provide that community that's necessary to enable people to build relationships with each other and
That's right.
build those accountability connections.
100%. Man, that's a great answer. And wow, what a cool thing that God is doing in your life. And I know that for those of us that have struggled with this particular sin, it never is fully done. It's a daily surrender to memorization, getting in God's word, being in relationship with him, communication with him, and then, like you said, communication with others. And so, Tim, man, what a powerful Fight Club story. So grateful that you're in this community and grateful for your time today, man. Thank you for coming on and doing this.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. For those of you listening to the show as we wrap up here, I just want to just say a couple things again. Our Fight Club community is free for Christian men. Go to getinthefight.club. What you get a chance to do is when you join is you connect with guys like Tim. I mean, if this is a story that you're listening to today and you're just like, man, I feel like I'm alone, I'm telling you, you're not alone. There are a lot of men that in the guilt and shame of dealing with sin, even if it's not just this one, maybe it is, but if this particular one hits you, there are men from all over the world that are coming in here because they're struggling with this particular sin. George Barna just came out with some new statistics that just tell you like almost 75% of professing Christians acknowledge that this is a battle. So you're not alone, but you do need help. And so I just want to offer you two things. Number one, if you go to getinthefight.club, click a join button, you can join for free. You and I will have a one-on-one conversation to answer questions, help you get connected. And then you get to build friendships, relationships, again, with guys like Tim and so many others here in our community. And so we invite you to that. Community is critical, like Tim said, to getting through this battle. It's critical. It's not like a good thing. It's critical. You have to have it somewhere, whether it's this or not. The other thing I would tell you is that as a coach, as a sexual addiction recovery coach, there's a program on the same website, getinthefight.club, called Quit Porn for Good. And it really walks you through the exact steps of things that I've walked through myself to walk into freedom and to get you connected to help. And so if you're missing that, if you're looking for that community and to like give me the step-by-steps, like tell me how to get out of this, go to getinthefight.club, join, or look for that Quit Porn for Good program that's there as well. We're here to help. But man, again, Tim, thank you for joining today. Your story is incredible. So grateful to have you in the fight with us. We appreciate you, man. We're praying for you and for your family and for your marriage. And again, for those of you listening, get in the fight in this thing. Don't let this thing, this lie fester. Confess it, bring it to Christ. He can bring healing and hope and help in your life, and he can deliver you from all of these things. So thank you for listening to the show today. Look forward to the next Fight Club story, and we'll see you soon. Hey guys, thanks so much for being here today and listening to the show. Please be sure to head over to the website at getinthefight.club. And before you go, if you haven't already, please subscribe, click the like button, and leave us a positive 5-star review. It makes a huge difference whenever you do. Have a great day.